She had destroyed 11 men before him. 11 powerful, wealthy, untouchable men who had never seen her coming. She had walked into their worlds with a false name and a perfect smile and left with everything she needed to bring them down. She had never once felt anything. That was her greatest professional asset. Until Adrian Cole. Until the man who was supposed to be her easiest target turned out to be the only person she'd ever met, who was exactly what he appeared to be. And by the time she understood what that meant, Marshall Reed had already put a plan in motion that would destroy them both. My name is Sloane, and this is the story of the assignment I couldn't finish, and the man I couldn't walk away from. Stay with me, because nothing about this goes the way you think. The office was on the 41st floor of a building in Midtown Manhattan that Marshall Reed had paid for with Adrian Cole's money. This detail would matter later. Right now, Sloane sat across from Marshall in a chair that cost more than most people's monthly rent and listened to him explain what he needed. Marshall Reed was 53, silver-haired, the kind of handsome that came from expensive maintenance rather than genetics. He had the particular quality of men who had spent decades being the second most important person in every room. The quiet accumulation of resentment that lived behind a perfectly calibrated smile. He and Adrian Cole had built Apex Capital together 14 years ago. Or rather, and this was the part Marshall never said out loud, Adrian had built it. Marshall had been there. There was a difference. Adrian Cole, Marshall said, sliding a photograph across the desk. My business partner. 41 years old, worth approximately $4 billion. Brilliant, disciplined, and completely trusted by our board, our investors, and everyone who has ever worked with him. Sloane looked at the photograph. She had done her research before this meeting. She always did. Adrian Cole was, by every public account, exactly what Marshall had just described. The financial press loved him. His employees had given Apex Capital a 97% approval rating 3 years running. He had built the firm from a 2-person operation in a Chicago apartment into one of the most respected private equity firms in America. She had also noticed, doing her research, that not one single person who had ever worked with or for Adrian Cole had a bad word to say about him. This was unusual. In her experience, powerful men always left damage somewhere. Always. The damage was just usually hidden well enough that you had to look for it. She had looked. She hadn't found any. What do you need? She said. Marshall folded his hands. I need leverage. The kind that ends careers. I need him compromised, publicly, irreversibly, in a way that gives the board no choice but to remove him. A pause. I need you to get close to him. Close enough to create a situation that cannot be explained away. How close? Sloane said. Marshall looked at her with the expression of a man who was about to say something he had decided to say carefully. As close as necessary, he said. Sloane looked at the photograph again. Adrian Cole looked back at her with dark eyes and the composed expression of a man who had never imagined someone like her existed. My fee, she said, is $500,000. Half now. Half on delivery. Marshall opened a drawer. He slid an envelope across the desk. She picked it up without counting it. She never counted. She had learned, early in her career, that people who needed to count revealed something about themselves they couldn't afford to reveal. 2 weeks, she said. Give me access to his schedule and his social circles. I'll handle the rest. She stood up. At the door, she paused. Marshall, she said without turning around. Yes. Why do you want him gone? A pause. The company needs new direction, Marshall said smoothly. Adrian has become an obstacle to growth. She nodded slowly. She didn't believe him. She went to work anyway. She entered Adrian Cole's world through the side door. Not literally, but the professional equivalent. She didn't try to meet him directly. She inserted herself into the periphery first. A contact at Apex Capital's law firm. A seat at a charity gala his foundation sponsored. A carefully engineered introduction through a mutual acquaintance who had no idea he was being used. Her name, for this assignment, was Sloane Mercer. Financial consultant. New York-based. Impeccable references, all of them constructed with the precision she applied to everything. She met Adrian Cole on a Thursday evening at the Metropolitan Museum. His foundation had sponsored a wing renovation. The event was invitation only, 200 people, the particular Manhattan crowd of money and culture, and the performance of caring about both. She had gotten her invitation through 3 degrees of separation that pointed to no one suspicious. She saw him before he saw her. He was standing near the new installation, a collection of American landscapes from the 19th century, talking to a museum curator with the focused attention of someone who was actually interested in what was being said rather than performing interest. He was taller than the photograph suggested. Dark suit, no tie. The same composed quality she had noticed in the photos, but more present in person. A stillness that wasn't coldness, just the particular ease of someone who didn't need to fill space with noise. She had approached men like this before. She knew exactly what she was doing. She moved to stand near the painting he would naturally turn to next, a Hudson River landscape, enormous and luminous, and waited. He turned. He saw her. She was looking at the painting. "The light in that one is wrong," he said. She turned as if surprised. "Wrong how?" "The angle," he said. He moved to stand beside her, a natural movement, the kind that didn't announce itself. "The sun is positioned northwest based on the shadows on the water. But Church painted this in the Catskills. That light angle doesn't exist there in summer." A beat. "It's still magnificent. He just made it more beautiful than it actually was." She looked at the painting. She looked at him. "Maybe he painted what he wanted it to be," she said, "rather than what it was." He considered this. "That's more generous than my interpretation," he said. "I'm a generous person," she said. He almost smiled. "Adrian Cole." "Sloane Mercer." They shook hands. His grip was firm without performing firmness. His eyes, up close, were the particular dark that photographed as black, but were actually a very deep brown, and they looked at her with an attention that was immediate and complete and slightly unnerving in a way she had not anticipated. She had been looked at by many powerful men. None of them had looked at her quite like this, like they were actually seeing her. She filed this, kept her expression exactly where she needed it. "Do you collect?" he asked. "I appreciate," she said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Collecting is about ownership," she said. "Appreciating is about the thing itself." He looked at her for a moment. "That's an interesting distinction," he said. "Most people in this room would disagree with you." "Most people in this room," she said, "paid for the invitation." He laughed. A real one, surprised out of him. The kind that couldn't be planned. It rearranged his face completely and made him look about 5 years younger and about 50% more dangerous to her professional equilibrium. She noted this with the clinical detachment of someone who had been doing this for 8 years. She also noted that the clinical detachment was working less efficiently than usual. The problem with Adrian Cole was that he was exactly what he appeared to be. This was a professional problem of the highest order. In 8 years of this work, Sloane had never encountered a target who didn't eventually reveal the gap between their public self and their private one. It was always there. The cruelty behind closed doors. The addiction carefully managed. The affair, the fraud. The secret that lived in the space between who they said they were and who they actually were. She had been with Adrian for 6 days. Coffee twice. Dinner once. 2 phone calls that had run longer than professional courtesy required, and she had found nothing. Not because she wasn't looking. She was always looking. She had gone through everything accessible. His financial disclosures, his legal history, his social connections, the professional trail he had left across 14 years of building Apex Capital. She had talked to people who had worked for him, done business with him, competed against him. What she found was consistent and, for her purposes, catastrophic. He was genuinely decent. He paid his assistants above market rate and had never once, in 14 years, had a harassment complaint filed against him. He had turned down 3 acquisitions that would have significantly grown Apex Capital because the target companies had what he called cultural debt. Treatment of employees and communities that he wasn't willing to absorb. He had a foundation that actually functioned rather than existing for tax purposes. And in person. In person, he was the most interesting conversation she had been in for years. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He disagreed with her twice in the first coffee. Directly, without aggression, with the particular confidence of someone who had no need to be right and simply wanted to find the truth. He was funny in the specific way of people who were funny because they saw things accurately rather than because they performed humor. She sat in her apartment on day 6 and looked at her notes. She had nothing. She had less than nothing. She had the growing, professionally dangerous suspicion that Marshall Reed had hired her to destroy a man who didn't deserve it. Her phone rang. "Marshall." "Progress," he said. "On schedule," she said. She ended the call. She sat in the quiet of her apartment and thought about the Hudson River painting, and he painted what he wanted it to be rather than what it was, and the way Adrian had looked at her when she said it, like he was actually seeing her. She picked up her phone. She did something she had never done in 8 years of this work. She started looking into Marshall Reed instead of his target. It took her 4 hours. Not because the information was hidden. It was hidden. But she was very good at finding hidden things. 4 hours, because the picture that emerged was complex enough that she wanted to be certain before she believed it. Marshall Reed had been skimming from Apex Capital for 3 years. Not dramatically. Not the kind of fraud that set off alarms. The quiet kind. The kind built by someone who understood financial systems well enough to move money in ways that looked like normal operational variance until you put 11 specific transactions side by side and understood what you were looking at. $230 million over 36 months. Into shell companies. Into accounts and jurisdictions chosen for their discretion. Into a life that Marshall had been building in parallel. Property in the Cayman Islands, an apartment in Monaco under a different name. The infrastructure of a disappearance being assembled one transaction at a time. And Adrian had found it. She found the evidence of that too. A forensic accounting review that Apex Capital had commissioned 6 weeks ago. Quietly, without board notification. The kind of review you commissioned when you suspected something and wanted to be certain before you acted. Adrian knew. He had known for at least 6 weeks. And Marshall, who had found out that Adrian knew, or had suspected that Adrian was getting close, had hired Sloane to neutralize him before he could act. She sat with this for a long time. She thought about the envelope on Marshall's desk. The $250,000 she had taken without counting. She thought about Adrian Cole saying he painted what he wanted it to be rather than what it was. She picked up her phone. She called Adrian. "I need to see you," she said. "Tonight. It's important." A pause. "Are you all right?" he said. The first thing he said. Not "what is it" or "can it wait?" "Are you all right?" She closed her eyes for one moment. "Not entirely," she said honestly. "Can we meet?" She told him at a restaurant on the Upper West Side. A corner table, her choice, positioned so she could see both entrances, and he could see her face completely. She told him everything. Marshall's approach, the fee, the assignment, 6 days of insertion into his life under a false identity with the explicit purpose of creating compromising material that would end his career. She told him about the financial records she had found, about the $230 million, about the shell companies and the Monaco apartment and the disappearance being assembled in the background. She put her phone on the table with the documentation pulled up. He looked at it for a long time. He didn't say anything. She waited. She had learned, in 8 years of watching powerful men receive difficult information, that the first response was almost always revealing. Rage, denial, the instinct to minimize, the instinct to shoot the messenger. Adrian Cole looked at the documentation for 4 minutes and then looked at her. "How long have you been doing this?" he said. "This work." She hadn't expected that question. 8 years, she said. "Have you ever stopped an assignment before?" "No," she said. He looked at her steadily. "Why this one?" he said. She held his gaze. This was the question she had been asking herself for 4 hours. The professional answer, the one that was also true, was that she had found evidence of a crime, and stopping the assignment was the rational response to a situation that had changed materially from what she had been briefed on. That was true. It was not the whole truth. "Because you didn't deserve it," she said. He was quiet. "And because," she said more carefully, "in 6 days I haven't found a single thing about you that was different from what you appeared to be. And in my experience, that's either very rare or very well hidden. And I've looked hard enough to know it's not hidden." He looked at the phone, at the documentation. "Marshall has been doing this for 3 years, he said. "Yes, I've known for 6 weeks." "I know. I was building the case before I moved, he said. I needed it to be complete. Airtight. A beat. He must have found out I was looking. Yes, she said. He sat back. He looked at the ceiling for a moment, the particular look of a man processing something enormous, with the focused efficiency of someone who had been processing enormous things his whole professional life. Then he looked at her. Sloane, he said. Her real name. Not Sloane Mercer, the financial consultant. Just Sloane. Like he had already separated the assignment from the person. Yes, she said. I need to ask you something direct. Ask, is this coming to me tonight? Is this part of a different assignment? A longer play? He said it without accusation. Just the direct, honest question of a man who needed to know. Because if it is, I need to know that now. She looked at him. No, she said. How do I know that? You don't, she said. Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. A pause. But I'm giving you the documentation. I'm telling you everything I know about Marshall's plan. If this were a longer play, giving you all of this would be the worst possible strategy. He thought about that. You're right, he said. I usually am, she said. It's professionally useful. Something moved in his expression. Something she had seen before. In the museum. In the coffee shop. In the moments when she had said something he hadn't expected. Recognition. Like finding something in a place you hadn't looked. What happens now, she said. To Marshall. He gets exactly what he built toward, Adrian said. His voice was very even. The complete picture. The board. The authorities. A beat. The same thing he was trying to do to me. Done correctly. With actual evidence. She looked at him. And you, he said. She looked at the table. I return the money, she said. The $250 he paid me. I walk away from the assignment. She paused. And I figure out what comes after 8 years of this. He was quiet for a moment. Have dinner with me tomorrow, he said. She looked up. Adrian. Not an assignment, he said. Not a play. Dinner. You and me. Actual names, actual conversation. No professional context of any kind. She looked at this man, who had just received documentation that his most trusted partner had been stealing from him for 3 years, and had spent 4 minutes processing it before asking about her, and felt something she had 8 years of practice not feeling. That's not a good idea, she said. Probably not, he said. Are you going to say no? She held his gaze. No, she said. He almost smiled. Good, he said. Marshall Reed found out on a Friday morning. Not about the dinner. About the documentation. The board notification that Adrian had filed the previous afternoon, attaching 3 years of forensic accounting to a formal fraud complaint that had simultaneously been sent to the SEC and the Manhattan DA's office. He found out because his assistant called him at 7 a.m. and said there were federal agents in the Apex Capitol lobby. He sat in his car in the parking garage of his building for 11 minutes. He thought about what he had done and what he had not done and what Sloane had and had not delivered. Then he made 2 calls. The first was to his lawyer. The second was to a man whose number he kept in a separate phone for exactly this kind of situation. A man who solved problems that lawyers couldn't. He described Sloane. He gave the man her last known address. He said, find her. Tonight. Sloane's phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Unknown number. She answered because she always answered unknown numbers. In her profession, unknown numbers were information. Silence on the other end. Then breathing. Then a voice she didn't recognize said, you should leave your apartment. Right now. Marshall Reed made a call this afternoon to someone who is very good at making problems disappear. Who is this? She said. Someone who has been watching Marshall Reed for 2 years. The voice said. Federal. I can't say more than that. Leave. Now. The line went dead. She was out of the apartment in 4 minutes. She took nothing except her go bag. The one she kept packed for exactly this kind of situation, because in 8 years of this work, she had always known that one day a situation would become exactly this kind of situation. She called Adrian from the street. He answered on the first ring. Marshall made a call, she said. Someone is coming for me tonight. Silence. 1 second. 2. Where are you? He said. West 74th, walking. Keep walking. I'm sending a car. Don't stop moving until it arrives. A beat. His voice had changed. Not panicked, just shifted into a different register. The voice of someone who had moved from processing to acting. Sloane. Yes. I've got you, he said. Okay. Keep moving. She kept moving. The car arrived in 6 minutes. The car took her to a hotel on the Upper East Side. Not his apartment. Not anywhere connected to his name in an obvious way. A suite booked under a corporate account that traced back through 3 entities before it reached Apex Capital. He was already there when she arrived. He stood up when she came in. She looked at him. This man she had been sent to destroy, standing in a hotel suite at 10:30 at night because someone was trying to hurt her, and felt the thing she had been managing for a week arrive all at once, undeniable and complete. Are you hurt? He said. No, she said. Sit down. I'm fine. Sloane. Just her name. The way he said it, like it was the actual thing, not the cover. She sat down. He sat across from her. Not beside her, across. Giving her space. Paying attention to what she needed in the particular way she had noticed from the first coffee. And that had been, she understood now, the beginning of all her professional problems. The federal contact, he said. Did they identify themselves at all? No. Said they'd been watching Marshall for 2 years. He nodded slowly. There's been a quiet investigation. I didn't know how far along it was. A beat. They must have had his phones. They heard the call he made. Yes. She looked at her hands. He'll be arrested. He already has been, Adrian said. My lawyer called 20 minutes ago. Marshall was taken into custody at 8 p.m. She absorbed this. It's over, she said. The Marshall part is over, he said carefully. She looked at him. There are things I need to say, he said. About the past week. About you. He held her gaze. Can I say them? Yes, she said. I knew something was off from the museum, he said. Not about you specifically. I didn't know what you were there for. But I've been in enough rooms with enough people to know when someone is managing their presence rather than just having one. A pause. I couldn't figure out what you were managing toward. You were too good for it to be obvious. She said nothing. I kept seeing you anyway, he said. Because whatever you were managing, underneath it was something real. I could hear it in how you talked, how you listened. He looked at her directly. The woman who came to me last night with that documentation, that was real. The most real version of anyone I've met in a long time. She looked at him. I came to you, she said carefully, after 6 days of lying to you. I know. I was paid to destroy you. I know that too. That doesn't, she stopped, bother me the way you think it should? He held her gaze. What bothers me is that someone as intelligent as you spent 8 years using yourself this way. A beat. That's not a judgment. It's an observation. She was quiet. Adrian, she said. Yes. I don't know how to do this, she said. Whatever this is. I've spent 8 years being someone else in every room I walked into. She looked at him. I don't have a lot of practice being the actual person. I know, he said. Neither did I for a long time. A pause. It gets easier when you find the right room. She looked at this man. She thought about the Hudson River painting. He painted what he wanted it to be rather than what it was, and about the conversation they had standing in front of it and how it had been. She understood now. The most honest exchange she'd had in 8 years, because she had said a true thing without planning to. What happens now, she said. Tonight, he said. You sleep here. You're safe. Tomorrow we deal with everything that needs dealing with. He stood. And after that, he paused. After that is up to you. She looked at him. The dinner you asked me to, she said. Yes. I want to go, she said, as the actual person. He looked at her with that expression, the one she had first seen at the museum, the one that had started all of this. Recognition. Good, he said. That's the only version I'm interested in. Marshall Reed was indicted on 14 counts of securities fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice 6 weeks after his arrest. The federal investigation, which had indeed been running for 22 months, had more than enough without Sloane's documentation. Her documentation simply accelerated the timeline by approximately 8 months, according to the lead prosecutor, who described it in a press statement as pivotal. Sloane was not named in any public filing. This was arranged quietly and completely by Adrian's legal team, who were, she observed, extremely good at what they did. She returned Marshall's $250,000 to an account specified by the federal investigators. She closed the professional identity she had used for 8 years. She sat in her apartment for 3 days after the indictment and thought about what came next. What came next, it turned out, was Adrian. Not immediately. They were both careful people who moved carefully, but consistently. Dinner became a habit. Dinner became weekends. Weekends became the particular rhythm of two people who had both spent years being someone else and had found, unexpectedly, someone they could be themselves with. She told him everything about the 8 years. All of it, the assignments, the methods, the 11 men before him. She told him in pieces, over months, because some of it was difficult to say, and she had learned that difficult things came out better in pieces than all at once. He listened every time, with the same quality of attention. Complete, unhurried, without the flinching she had expected and had been bracing for. "You're not going to ask me to justify it," she said once. Late at night, his apartment in Manhattan, the city lit outside the window. "No," he said. "Why not?" "Because you've already justified it to yourself 100 times, he said. "And because the person sitting here is the person who chose to stop." A beat. "That's the part I'm interested in." She looked at him. She thought, this is what it feels like. Not the performance of it. Not the managed version. The actual thing. She started a firm, legitimate, above board. The particular expertise of someone who had spent 8 years understanding how powerful people concealed information applied now to helping companies find and fix their own vulnerabilities before someone found them for worse reasons. Adrian was her first client. He was also. She was clear with him and with herself. The last person she would ever be professionally involved with. She had a rule about this now. She had a lot of new rules. "You're making rules," he observed once. "I'm building structure," she said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" She thought about it. "Rules keep things out," she said. "Structure holds things up." He looked at her. "I'm keeping that," he said. "It's yours," she said. Chapter 10, The Proposal. He asked her on an ordinary Tuesday. Not a special occasion. Not a restaurant or an event or a grand gesture designed to be remembered. A Tuesday in November, in her office, where he had come to sign documents related to a security audit her firm was completing for Apex Capital. He sat across from her desk. He signed the documents. He looked at her. "Sloane," he said. "Yes, I want to ask you something." "You're already asking it," she said. "You have that face." "What face?" "The face you have when you've decided something," she said. "You get very still. Stiller than usual, which is saying something." He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Will you marry me?" Not a question exactly. The same quality she had noticed the night of the hotel suite, the night of Marshall's arrest. A statement of his own certainty, leaving the answer entirely to her. She looked at this man, who had been her target and had become the most honest relationship of her life, and thought about the museum and the painting, and he painted what he wanted it to be rather than what it was. She thought, I know what I want it to be. I know what it actually is. For the first time in her life, those two things are the same. Yes, she said. He reached into his jacket pocket. He produced a ring, simple, specific, chosen with the same attention he brought to everything. He put it on her finger. She looked at it. You had it with you, she said, at a contract signing. I've had it with me for 3 weeks, he said. I was waiting for the right moment. A contract signing is the right moment. You were here, he said. That's the right moment. She looked at him and laughed, the complete, unmanufactured laugh that had been, she thought, the beginning of all her professional problems and the best thing that had ever happened to her. Studio microphone closing narration. She was hired to destroy him. She destroyed the assignment instead. Sloane had spent 8 years being someone else in every room she walked into. She had been very good at it. She had also been, underneath all of it, completely alone. Adrian Cole was supposed to be target number 12. Instead, he was the person who said, "Are you all right?" before he said anything else. The person who listened without flinching. The person who looked at her, the actual her, not the managed version, and found it more interesting than anything she had performed. Marshall Reed was convicted on 11 of 14 counts. He is currently serving his sentence in a federal facility in New Jersey. Apex Capital, under Adrian Cole leadership, grew by 40% in the 2 years following Marshall's removal. And Sloane, who had built a career on knowing exactly who people were underneath what they presented, finally met someone who knew exactly who she was. And stayed anyway. That's not a small thing. That's everything. If this story gripped you, if Sloane's assignment kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button. Subscribe to Golden Veil Stories. Ring the bell. We have more where this came from. More stories about love that arrives in impossible circumstances. Wealth with real stakes. And the moment someone decides to stop being who they were hired to be and start being who they actually are. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have stopped the assignment? I'll see you in the next one. This is Golden Veil Stories. The best part is always what happens next.